It's horrible. There are so many hard parts. The hardest for me is the kids. That's the hardest for me.
There are moments in a person's life that split everything into two distinct eras, the before and the after. For Kelly Clarkson, one of the most decorated voices in American music history, that dividing line wasn't a Grammy win or a record-breaking chart debut. It wasn't the night she stood on the American Idol stage at 20 years old, clutching a microphone while the entire country held its breath. No, that line was drawn much quieter than any of that. It was drawn in courtrooms, in whispered legal filings, in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside and felt like a slow disappearance from the inside. And for years that stretched across custody battles, financial disputes, and an emotional weight most people will never fully understand, Kelly Clarkson said almost nothing. She smiled through interviews. She sang through the pain. She kept showing up. But now, for the first time, she's talking. And what she's revealing about Brandon Blackstock isn't just shocking. It reframes everything we thought we knew about one of music's most beloved love stories. To truly understand the depth of this betrayal, you have to go back to where Kelly started, not the polished, record-breaking superstar, but the girl before all of it. Kelly Brienne Clarkson was born on April 24, 1982, in Fort Worth, Texas, and raised in the small city of Burleson, just south of the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. Her childhood was not the stuff of fairy tales. Her father, Stephen Clarkson, walked out on the family when Kelly was just 6 years old, an absence that would leave a wound so deep she would one day write one of her most emotionally devastating songs about it. Her mother, Jean N., was a school teacher who did everything she could to keep the household running, but the financial and emotional strain of being a single parent was immense. Kelly and her siblings were eventually split up and sent to live with different family members, a fracturing of the family unit that Kelly has described as one of the most formative and painful experiences of her early life. She grew up attending church twice a week, raised in a conservative Southern Baptist environment where discipline and structure were the pillars of daily life. There wasn't much room for dreaming big in Burleson, Texas, not in the way Hollywood movies would have you believe. But Kelly dreamed anyway. She sang around the house, sang to herself, sang the way some people breathe, automatically, naturally, as if she had no real choice in the matter. It was a choir teacher named Cynthia Glenn who first heard something extraordinary in that voice. Glenn encouraged Kelly to audition for the school choir, and though Kelly had never received a single formal voice lesson and didn't even particularly believe in her own talent at that point, she said yes. That one yes would eventually change music history, but the road between that small choir room in Burleson and the national stage was long and littered with setbacks. After graduating high school in 2000, Kelly was offered full academic scholarships to prestigious music institutions including Berklee College of Music and the University of Texas at Austin. She turned them all down, convinced that real-world experience would teach her more than any classroom. She moved to Los Angeles determined to make it on her own terms, working telemarketing jobs, waitressing at a comedy club, handing out product samples at events, all to scrape together enough money for studio time. She recorded a demo. She sent it out. And the music industry sent it back, rejection after rejection, executives telling her she was too soulful, too raw, too emotional, not commercial enough. Then her apartment caught fire and she found herself homeless in a city that had given her nothing but closed doors. She went back to Burleson, defeated, and then, on a dare from a friend, she auditioned for a new television competition nobody had quite heard of yet. American Idol. On September 4, 2002, Kelly Clarkson won the first season of that show with 58% of the public vote. She was 20 years old. Her debut single leapt from number 52 to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in a single week, shattering a 38-year-old record that had been held by the Beatles. Overnight, the girl from Burleson who had been sleeping on friends' couches and working for minimum wage became the most talked-about new voice in American music. And she never stopped. Over the next 2 decades, Kelly Clarkson would accumulate 3 Grammy Awards, 4 American Music Awards, and sales that would surpass 4 to 5 million records worldwide. She built something remarkable, not just a career, but a legacy, which is exactly why what happened with Brandon Blackstock cuts so deeply. Kelly first met Brandon Blackstock in 2006, at a rehearsal for the Academy of Country Music Awards, where he was working as a talent manager. He was understated, professional, and well-connected. His stepmother happened to be Reba McEntire, one of Kelly's own musical heroes. Nothing romantic came of that first meeting. But 6 years later, when their paths crossed again, something shifted. By December 2012 they were engaged, and by October 2013 they were married in a ceremony at Blackberry Farm in Walland, Tennessee. From the outside, it genuinely looked like a storybook match. A powerhouse vocalist and a man who understood the entertainment industry, who seemed grounded and capable, who brought with him a sense of calm stability that Kelly's whirlwind life perhaps genuinely needed. Together they built a blended family. Brandon had 2 children from a previous relationship, and Kelly and Brandon welcomed their daughter River Rose in June 2014, followed by their son Remington Alexander in April 2016. Their social media presence painted a picture of warmth and joy, family vacations, backstage moments, children laughing, a couple deeply in love with their life together. Fans used the word goals to describe them. Industry insiders seemed to admire the partnership. And Kelly herself appeared, at least publicly, to be living the kind of personal happiness that had sometimes eluded her in her earlier years. But the private reality, as Kelly would eventually reveal, was almost nothing like the public image that in interviews she gave years after the divorce. Kelly described feeling profoundly alone inside her marriage. She talked about carrying the full emotional labor of raising their children, of managing the household, of maintaining the public-facing stability of their family, all while simultaneously recording music, hosting a television show, and holding together a multi-million-dollar professional career. She described feeling like a single parent while technically still married, a sensation that became increasingly difficult to ignore as the years went on. The emotional loneliness, she said, became unbearable. But still, she said nothing publicly. She kept showing up. She kept performing. She kept smiling. Then in June 2020, Kelly filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. The tabloids picked up the story immediately, speculating about what had gone wrong. Most of the coverage centered on the surface-level drama, custody questions, property disputes, the standard painful machinery of high-profile divorce. What wasn't known, what Kelly herself kept carefully shielded from public knowledge for years, was the far more serious truth about what Brandon Blackstock had actually been doing behind the scenes. Brandon, along with his father Narvel Blackstock's company Starstruck Management Group, had been managing Kelly's professional career for years. On its face, that might seem unremarkable. Managers are a standard part of any major artist's professional team. But under California labor law, anyone negotiating contracts or acting in the capacity of a talent agent must hold a specific state-issued license. Brandon Blackstock did not have that license. Neither, for the purposes of their work on Kelly's behalf, did Starstruck operate within the boundaries of what they were legally permitted to do. Despite this, they had been brokering major professional deals for Kelly, including her lucrative contract with the television competition series The Voice, where she served as a coach, and collecting commissions on those deals for years. In the eyes of California law, this was not a technicality. It was a violation of labor regulations that directly harmed Kelly financially. Kelly took legal action. The case went before the California Labor Commissioner, and in November 2023, the commissioner ruled firmly in Kelly's favor. The judgment found that Brandon and Starstruck Management Group had acted illegally as unlicensed talent agents and ordered them to repay Kelly more than $2.5 million in improperly collected commissions. Brandon immediately appealed the decision. But in May 2024, just months before the case was set to go before a jury, both sides reached a confidential settlement. The specific financial terms were sealed. But the core truth, that the man Kelly had married, trusted, and built a family with had been illegally profiting from her career while presenting himself as her most trusted advisor, was now a matter of public legal record, and Kelly, for the first time, was free to say so. In early 2025, speaking in an interview that carried a weight of carefully chosen words, Kelly said plainly that nobody truly knew what Brandon had done. She admitted that she had stayed quiet for years not to protect herself, but to protect everyone around her, her children, her professional relationships, even Brandon himself. She said she had convinced herself that remaining silent was the mature choice, the responsible choice, the choice that would spare her kids from further public disruption. But what that silence had actually cost her was something she was only beginning to reckon with honestly. It had cost her the truth. And the truth, she now understood, was the only thing that had ever actually set her free. One of the most painful and drawn-out chapters of the entire ordeal involved a sprawling Montana ranch that Kelly had purchased during their marriage. When the divorce was filed, Brandon refused to vacate the property. Despite the legal dissolution of their marriage and the court's ultimate determination regarding the property's ownership, Brandon remained on the ranch for months, an act that many legal observers and Kelly supporters characterized as deliberate, protracted emotional torment. A court order was eventually required to remove him, and he finally vacated in June 2022. Nearly 2 years after the divorce filing. The ranch, which had once represented retreat and family peace, had become the physical embodiment of a truth Kelly had been trying to avoid confronting. That the person she had trusted most had chosen, when everything fell apart, to take rather than to let go. Through all of this, Kelly's creative voice became the primary vehicle through which she began to process everything she couldn't yet say out loud. In June 2023, she released her 10th studio album, Chemistry, and it was unlike anything she had previously released. Raw, honest, emotionally complex, and sonically experimental, the album dealt openly with grief, anger, betrayal, and the tentative, fragile process of healing. Critics responded enthusiastically, calling it her most mature and honest work. Fans found themselves in tears over tracks that captured with startling precision the particular anguish of loving someone who turned out to be something other than who they claimed to be. Songs like Mine and Red Flag Collector resonated in ways that went far beyond chart performance. They resonated because they were clearly, unmistakably true. Earlier in the legal proceedings, in February 2022, Kelly made another quiet but deeply personal decision. She legally changed her name to Kelly Brianne, retaining Clarkson only for professional use. For those paying close attention, this was significant. The name Clarkson had always carried a complicated emotional weight. It was the surname of the father who had abandoned her and her siblings when she was just 6 years old. She had written about that abandonment in devastating, breathtaking detail in her song Piece by Piece, a ballad in which she contrasted her father's failures with the devoted fatherhood she believed Brandon represented. After the divorce, after everything that came to light, that song took on a shattering new dimension. The man she had written about as the antithesis of her abandoning father had, in a different and uniquely painful way, repeated the pattern. He had chosen himself over the family they had built together. But here is the thing about Kelly Clarkson that her story keeps proving, over and over: she does not stay down. She has never stayed down. The girl who came back from a burned apartment in Los Angeles, from industry rejection, from a childhood fractured by abandonment, that girl is still very much present in the woman who is now speaking her truth with calm, measured, hard-won clarity. In 2025, after parting ways with Atlantic Records following years of creative tension, Kelly launched her own independent record label, finally taking full and unambiguous ownership of her creative output. Her first independent single, Where Have You Been, written and produced by Kelly herself, was released in May 2025 and was widely interpreted as exactly what it sounded like: a declaration of artistic and personal independence, written by a woman who had finally stopped waiting for permission to be fully herself. That same summer, Kelly launched a Las Vegas residency titled Kelly Clarkson Studio Sessions. An intimate, stripped-back concert experience that ran from July through November 2025. The show was deliberately different from the arena spectacles of her past: smaller, more personal, more present. Critics and fans who attended described it as an extraordinary experience, the feeling of watching someone perform not for the applause but because the music itself demanded to be made. Meanwhile, the Kelly Clarkson Show continued into its 6th season with strong ratings and an audience that had grown fiercely loyal to her particular brand of warmth and radical emotional honesty.